Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. Today I'm with Stan Stockton, K5GO and ZF9CW, two call signs. Stan is well known in the contesting community as a contester, but also as a contest station builder. His son, Kevin Stockton, N5DX, is one of the best contesters in the world. Really excited to talk to Stan today. He's got a great station in Arkansas, but I'm particularly interested in his station in Cayman Brac. I'm sure we're going to go in a lot of different directions. Stan, thank you for joining me.
Thanks. Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you joining me from Cayman Brac, and I know you haven't been feeling well, so this is an extra pleasure for me that you were able to get in front of the camera today, so that is much appreciated. Let's start with your background in ham radio, Stan. I'm curious when you were first licensed and what the motivation was.
My dad was a ham, like so many others. He got his license in 1932 as W5DRW when he was 14 years old. And I got mine in 1967 when I was 13 years old. And then Kevin got his license at age 13 also. His date of license was 1993.
So have you been active all of those years?
I've not been so active in radio all of those years. Ham radio is one of those, to me, it's the greatest hobby in the world, but it's always on my mind. 24, not 24/7 because I do sleep some, but I'm thinking about it all the time, whether I'm doing anything or getting on the air or not. There's probably not been 8 hours go by in any stretch during my life when I haven't thought about ham radio. So I'm always thinking about it, but not always doing something with it.
So when you're thinking about it, are you thinking about contesting or station building or something else or both?
It's usually better antenna systems to do better in contests. I think I enjoy preparing for a contest almost as much as I do working a contest.
Well, that works out well for Kevin, and we'll get into that later on. But let's start with K5GO in Arkansas. What's the station that you use there?
Currently, my station is rather small. We moved from Harrison, Arkansas, where I had a multi station. And currently at my house, I have a 70-foot Roan 45G tower with a homebrew tri-bander and rotatable dipole for 40. And rarely get on. The line noise in town is so bad. It's frustrating when you turn the radio on and the S meter goes to S9 before you tune a signal in.
Well, that's disappointing for sure, especially when you have that much potential firepower. So let's move to Cayman Brac, because that's really what attracted my attention after the CQ Worldwide CW contest, in which N5DX, Kevin, your son, did a fantastic job. Tell me the beginnings of Cayman Brac and why you, first of all, located there with your family and built a radio station.
Kevin and his family lived on Grand Cayman for maybe a year and a half to 2 years. And during that time, my wife and I came to visit, and he worked for the government. He's a speech pathologist, and the government sent him to Cayman Brac every Thursday, I believe, to work in the school system over here. He worked for the schools in Grand Cayman. And so on one of our visits, we decided that we would come over to Cayman Brac just to see what I'd never heard of it. I didn't know anything about the Cayman Islands, really. So my wife and I flew over with him, and he went back that night, but we decided to stay the night. We found a place to stay and just toured all around the island and liked what we saw, particularly the fact that there were, I think the population was something like 1,800 people, not a stoplight on the island. And, it seemed like you could drive down the main road sometimes for a minute or two and not even see another car. So we liked the fact that it was not populated. If you go to Grand Cayman, it's kind of like going to any other city in the United States. Lots of traffic, lots of, but it's different here. It's nice.
So what year was that you visited, and when did you finally buy a property?
I think that was probably in 2015. I remember that well because the WRTC was in Boston in 2014. Kevin was down here, I believe, and came back for that to operate in that with N2IC. And so it was probably 2015. We purchased this lot that we have in late 2015 or early 2016, sight unseen. Actually, I was talking to a real estate agent and telling her kind of what I wanted. Of course, it had to be on the north side of the island. So she found something that piqued my interest a little bit, and I asked Kevin when he went over the next Thursday to come look at it. So he stopped by and took a look at it, and of course it was all jungle and wooded, and you couldn't tell very much. But I do have something like something in the neighborhood of 140 feet on the water.
So clearly, since you think ham radio nearly 24/7, when you were looking at that property or considering it, you were thinking about a ham radio station at that point. What were the other attributes other than being on the north side?
Well, even though Cayman Brac is so small, it's something like 2 miles wide and about 12 miles long, and the length of the island travels northeast. So most of the stores and restaurants and stuff like that are on the southwest end of the island, and we're located not quite midway, probably 4 to 5 miles from the west end, and right next to the hospital, about a block from the hospital.
So it sounds like you bought land. So the first project was you needed to build a house before you build a radio station, I take it.
I found a local contractor who was working on another big project, and actually he had never built on his own, built a house, but he was ready to go in business, and so I made a deal with him to build this house. It's a very small house, but it's very efficient. It's only, if you can imagine, it's only 600 square feet. It's 20 feet by 30 feet. There's a bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living area, and then behind me there's a 5x9 closet that I call the radio closet. It's got French doors that open up, and there's all the stuff.
So 5x9, you need to be pretty efficient there. So when were you actually on the air in Cayman Brac?
I think that the house had been started in the spring of 2016, and we made a trip down in the spring, and I rented another VRBO type house, brought a rig and a vertical, and operated the WPX contest from Cayman Brac in, I think it was 2016, and it was unbelievable. I mean, you put a simple vertical within 15 or 20 feet of the water and 100 watts, and you feel like you're at home running stacked Yagis and 1500 watts. I mean, it's just incredible.
One of the things that I've discovered in my short time back into ham radio is that a lot of people build a station, they stay in the same home, and they just keep adding to it. And oftentimes when I talk to those people off camera, they'll tell me, I would do it entirely differently if I knew what I know now. It must have been great for you to go down to Cayman Brac and be able to build a station from the ground up with all that you had known and experienced before that. So I'm really curious what your plan was when you decided to put up the station there at home in Cayman Brac. What did that plan look like?
Initially, I mean, after the experience in the WPX contest, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to have to do anything at this location other than put up a few verticals. I mean, that's it. That's all I need. And I did that for a year or two. And it works well. But then I found out that, particularly from modeling information, that a horizontal Yagi at a decent height is going to beat that vertical in the direction in which it's pointed. There's still a nice advantage to having verticals because you're allowed at least everywhere that you're going over water. They are no good whatsoever going to the south or southeast, southwest. Southwest, I've got water. But a vertical with saltwater path to where you're going, you can't beat that. And it's nice to have people call you from all over the world with that single vertical. But anyway, I decided that Yagis were the way to go on the high bands, and still, of course, stick with verticals on 48 and 160.
And what do you have for equipment behind you there?
I've got an ICOM 7610 that's the main radio, I'll say, and then I've got a TS590SG on the table. That's a good radio as well. And I think I've got two other TS590SGs on the shelf. But and then for amplifiers, I've got a SPE 2KFA and a PGXL Flex or 403A amplifier.
Stan, you'd mentioned earlier that station building is really your passion and antennas are your passion, but you are also contesting.
Yes, sure.
What's that experience been like in the past year from Cayman Brac?
Well, it's certainly different than operating a contest from Arkansas. I mean, you can, if you get on in the DX contest and call CQ, it doesn't matter whether you're running 100 watts or 1,500 watts, you're going to have an instant pileup. I'm talking about CW. I do operate phone, but I'd prefer not to. But anyway, it's a huge pileup, and I wasn't used to that from Arkansas. I mean, sure, on 15 meters in the CQ Worldwide DX contest, when the sunspots are right, you can have a big JA pileup or even a European pileup, but it's nothing like this. I don't know how many people call at once, but it's got to be 50, 75 people, and a lot of them on the same frequency. So it's a challenge.
Stan, I've heard a lot of people say, I prefer CW. I'll do phone if I have to. Don't really like it. But honestly, I've never asked people why. And it's on my mind right now. Why do you prefer not to do phone?
I don't know. I guess it's because when I started, of course, I was a novice and it was CW only. I was a novice for about a year. And even after I got phone privileges, after getting a general, advanced, or extra class, I still preferred CW, and I still do. I don't really know the reason. I guess maybe it's you feel like you've accomplished something when you pull a call sign out of a pileup on CW, as opposed to just hearing W1DED 598.
Well, that's good reason. I'll take that. So I want to jump into the antennas. You've said that you really enjoy building antennas. I'm kind of curious where that came from. Do you have, in your professional life, do you have some background with that? Have you been self-taught, or did you have a mentor? Where did you get the antenna building expertise?
I have no background that would make me any kind of an expert, and I don't feel like I'm an expert in anything. But even though remotely located in the hills of Arkansas, it seems like there was always somebody around who knew way more than I would ever know about a particular thing. I mean, I grew up in a little town called Siloam Springs, which is where we live now, and at the time the population was about 4,000. Well, 15 miles away, there's one of the pioneers of 160 meters, which is my favorite band because of this guy, John Dormois, W5SUS. I'm sure you've never heard of him, but some of the viewers will. And he lived like 15 miles from me. So he got me interested in 160 meters when I was a sophomore in high school. He was 40 years older than me, but we became lifelong friends. And another person who entered my life at a time and knew way more than I did about everything was Dave Pruitt, K5GO. He's a silent key now, but he moved to the town we lived in and transferred from a junior college near Detroit and went to John Brown University in Siloam Springs. I was already into contesting and working the sweepstakes every year and, doing what I could with what I had from Arkansas. So he moved to Siloam Springs, and this guy was the one who wrote the NA logging program. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but it was the predecessor to CT. he wrote NA before K1EA wrote CT. So this kid moves to town, and he's just kind of getting into contesting, and I'm already kind of established, having been on the air for maybe 5 or 6 years or something like that. And so Dave knew how to program computers. He was a software engineer. He was an electrical engineering major. I'll give you an example of how he inspired me. I had been working the sweepstakes every year since I had gotten my general class license. Never made the top 10. Came close, but never made it. So Dave suggested that I build an accu-memory keyer. An accu-memory keyer was developed by, or designed by WB4VVF. There's an article in QST. And back then you couldn't go on the internet and order parts from Mauser and put stuff together. You had to scrounge for parts. So anyway, I built this accu-memory keyer. And I told Dave, now this is in 1976. I told Dave, I said, now that I've got the ability to push a button on my accu-memory keyer to send B, WA5RTG 67 Arkansas, what am I going to do with all that time while I'm listening to somebody send my code for me? And I said, I'll tell you what I want to do with it. I want to set up another radio, and I want to listen to another band. So here I am with 2 Drake lines on the desk, and Dave has taken a piece of paper and drawn out the schematic for what he wanted me to build, which would tie into the accu-memory keyer so that when I push the button to send BWA5RTG 67 Arkansas, it would automatically switch my headphones to the other radio and then switch them back when the memory keyer stopped sending. So I know people talk about SO2R being something that started in like the mid-'80s, but I didn't tell anybody. There wasn't anybody around to tell. There wasn't another contester within 100 miles of me. But anyway, for the next 8 out of 10 years, I made the top 10 by having 2 radios on the desk, a memory keyer, and being able to listen to the other radio or find someone on the other radio.
I love that story. It really says a lot about ham radio operators, the ingenuity, the problem solving. So what year was that again?
1976.
1976. You were doing what we know now as SO2R.
Yes. And somewhere in all my stuff, I've got this little box that's probably about 6 inches long and 2 inches tall and 4 inches wide. That's just full of all kinds of TO5 CAN relays that Dave told me I should get, and then all the headphone jacks and keyer lines and all that stuff. And you could manually switch it, or you could make it automatic to where when the memory keyer was switching, it would go to the other radio. Someplace I've still got that. It belongs in a museum.
If you find it, please send me a photograph. I'd love to see that. And if you send it in time, maybe I'll include it in this particular video interview. I want to go back to the antennas. I had read somewhere that you built a 40-meter Yagi, might have been the biggest Yagi on 40 meters in the world at the time.
Well, that's what I thought, and I still tend to think I'm gonna stick by that story, that at the time it was the largest rotating 40-meter Yagi. That all started with my wife and I were eating breakfast at McDonald's one morning, and the manager came over to the table we were sitting at. He said, "Are you still into that radio stuff?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I've got a friend who has a tower he wants to get rid of." Now, I'm thinking, because I've been through this a dozen times, that it's going to be a push-up mast with an old broken TV antenna on it, or a rusted Roan 20G tower that's 25, 30 feet tall. So anyway, he keeps talking, and he says, the neighbor of mine is tired of paying the electric bill for the lights on this tower. And I'm thinking, this is a real tower. So anyway, he told me where it was, and my wife and I finished our breakfast and went to where this tower was. It wasn't there. And I called up the McDonald's and got him on the phone, and he said, "You're at the right place." He said, "Go over in the field. See, that's exactly where it is." So I jumped the barbed wire fence and went over in the field, and laying in the field is this gigantic tower that was a Cox Communications tower. It was 3 feet on a side, had 3-inch legs, 20-foot sections, had a gigantic dish that, anyway, the guy had hired someone. I would have done it for free, but he hired somebody to come over, some tower company to come over, and all they did was take off one set of guy wires and let the thing fall. So I called the guy up who owned the tower. He told me that, he says, I'm gonna take that thing to the scrap yard and sell it for scrap. And I said, well, I've got a better idea, and that is I'll take it apart so you won't have to do that. You bring it to me, which is closer than the scrap yard, and I'll pay you what the scrap yard would pay you for it. He said, that sounds like a good deal. So I called him up a week later, and I said, I'm going to go start taking that tower apart. He says, well, my neighbor kind of wants to cut it up and use it as fence or as post for a horse corral. And I said, what can we do to get back to where I take it apart, you bring it to me, and I pay you something? He says, I want $500 for that tower. I said, okay, I'll do that. So anyway, I bought the tower for $500, and I took it apart, and he brought it to me, section by section on a big truck. So I'm sitting here looking at this tower, wondering, what am I going to do with it? You know, I mean, you don't put up a tower like that and put a 6-element 20-meter beam on it. You could do that on run 45 or 55. So I decided I wanted to build a 40-meter Yagi, and did a little bit of research, and I didn't find anybody else who had a 6-element 40-meter Yagi on a boom that was in excess of 100 feet. So that's what we did, and it probably took 4 months to build the thing, with me going out every night to Leon, the welder's house, who my wife referred to as Leona, since she had never met Leon. And anyway, a few months later, after getting this tower, it was ready to go up, and the boom is 45G, the vertical truss support is 55G, and the side trusses are 25G.
So how did that perform?
It was incredible. It was really incredible. You know, some people think about dBs as being, like 1 or 2 dB is insignificant. You know, after all, an S unit is 5 or 6 dB. So 1 or 2 dB can't be much. Well, it is a lot. It's huge. I think this antenna probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 10.5 dB free space gain, dBi free space gain, which is probably 3 dB more than 3 or 4 element normal Yagi. And the difference is huge. I remember going up one day and getting on 40 meters at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm tuning around and I hear this big European pileup, and it's on a 4S7, and I could hear the 4S7, broad daylight, and a huge European pileup. I called one time and he came back. It was just mind-boggling.
So I also refer to a story that I think you had shared with me. I think it was the 2006 CQ Worldwide contest. You were doing a multi-op, and your 40-meter QSO count beat out K3LR, KC1XX, W3, LPL, 3 pretty significant stations in the U.S.
Kevin and my friend Chuck, KM5G, operated 40 meters with the new antenna that had just gone up 2 weeks before the contest, and they did really well. Unfortunately, this monster had to be turned a lot during the contest because I didn't have any other antennas. So if they wanted to work somebody in Africa, they had to turn the antenna. If they wanted to work people in South America through a pilot, they had to turn an antenna. But yeah, they did quite well. We were quite happy with that result.
Just mentioning the multi-op operation in 2006 recalls an interview that I had with Kevin N5DX, and I think he shared with me You've always obviously told me already he got his license at 13, but he grew up in this multi-operator environment.
We started this multi-station in, I think it was 2000. And the question was, I wanted to have a radio station that was better than what I could put up in town on a city lot. And I had this property up on Gaither Mountain near Harrison, Arkansas. And I talked to Kevin. Kevin was in college. He was about maybe a junior in college or something like that. And I told him that I wanted to build a radio station that he and I could enjoy operating. Didn't know whether to build or to buy a old railroad car or some kind of portable home or something to put up there. But I started talking to some friends of mine in Harrison, K5LG, K5RM, some of the people who were local who had some interest in contesting. And the more I talked to these people and the more people who I talked to, it became apparent that there would be a lot of them that would be interested in building a multi station and helping do that. I was going to finance the thing, but anyway, 6 of us built a house in the year 2000. We started in January of 2000, and we operated the CQ Worldwide CW contest in November of that same year with a house finished. And one of my friends who I met because of that is N50E, who now lives in Texas. And this is a guy who can do anything. He's the one who said, well, let's just build a house. And I said, well, I don't know how to build a house. And he says, I do. Well, it turns out Carlin knows how to do everything. So anyway, 6 of us spent our weekends for about 9 or 10 months and built a house from scratch. And that's how that got started. And then the antennas just, kept getting more towers. I think I ended up with 13 towers, if I'm not mistaken. Our goal, I guess, because we couldn't beat K3LR or W3LPL, KC1XX, we could aspire to compete with NQ4I. And perhaps we could beat W0AIH, even though he had a much bigger station, probably because of how far north he was. But you don't have to win to have fun. You can. Everybody gets together and does the best they can, and you're proud of the result, and away you go.
Well, speaking of winning, let's segue to your son, Kevin Stockton, N5DX. He's been a very accomplished world-class contester. And recently he competed in the CQ Worldwide CW from ZF9CW. I presume he was there, but I guess I haven't asked you if it was remote, and we can get into that in a second. He's in a virtual tie with N2NT Andy, who is operating V47T in St. Kitts. And I'd just like to hear a little bit about the preparation that you made with that station, and maybe from a distance what you feel as though Kevin's experience was in that contest.
Well, as far as preparing, I didn't do this because he came down to operate the contest, but on this trip, we usually come down here for about 3 or 4 months each year. On this trip, I shipped down enough stuff to build another tri-bander. The tri-bander on my 55G tower is a 36-foot boom. It's got 4 elements on 20, 5 on 15, and 8 on 10. And so I shipped down all the aluminum tubing to essentially duplicate that antenna, and I built a side mount so I could rotate the thing 180 degrees or so on the side of the tower. So I did hurry up and get that antenna up and get it all hooked up for Kevin. And then I think, other than working on my 9 circle to try to make sure that it was working properly, the rest of it was just praying that nothing went wrong, because he was going to be here. I was going to be within arm's reach if things failed. So, coax connectors fail, and I just tried to make sure everything worked. I didn't do anything special for him.
And can you reflect upon his experience in the contest?
He's been doing the 2BSIQ thing for a few years now, mostly from N2QV station. And I'm sure that with the antenna system that N2QV has, that there were some pretty good pileups of Europeans, but nothing like he would have experienced here. So I was really proud of the fact that he came in here. He knew what he wanted to do. He brought an SO2R box. He hooked everything up. And prior to coming here, I think that he practiced every day for weeks, which is something that I'm not good at. I don't prepare for any. I don't know. I play golf also. I don't practice my golf. I don't practice my ham radio. I just play golf or get on the radio. But Kevin was prepared, and he came in here and experienced some of these big pileups on two bands simultaneously and handled them quite well, I think.
Well, it was very impressive talking to Kevin. I put him in the same group as Jose, CD1BOH, and Dan Craig, N6MJ. The mental preparedness that these three guys have when they go into a contest is really otherworld.
I'm amazed at how good he has become. He's not on the radio very much. He's kind of like me. He works the big contests or the ones he wants to work, but it's not like he's on every weekend or on in the CWTs every Wednesday, or like me, might go 6 months and not even make a contact on the radio. But he's very good at it, and I'm very proud of it.
Stan, as we wrap up, I'm looking at the clock here, and I appreciate your time this morning, but as we wrap up, do you have any advice for the beginning and intermediate contesters that watch this show?
Find someone that's as local as possible to where you are, who does really well in what you're interested in. If you're interested in contesting, find someone within a couple of hours of where you live and make friends with them if they're someone who routinely makes high scores in contests. Go operate with them if they're willing to do a multi-op contest, even if it's not in a major contest, and see how they do what they do, how they achieve what they achieve. It's very difficult to become really good on your own, I think, and I think you need to observe other people doing what it takes to do well.
Well, I appreciate that advice. I think it's spot on. I think I'd add to it, find a Stan Stockton that can work on station design and build.
Well, even with this station, I mean, I'm kicking myself because I'll tell you why I'm kicking myself. If I go out there to the water, which is only 70 feet from me right now, if I go out there to the water and take out a compass, the shoreline is at 40 degrees. That means that if I have an antenna right on the edge of the water, that I've got a saltwater path to Europe. But if I'm back 50 feet from the water, I don't have a saltwater path to Europe. And all I've got to do is drive down the road about 2 miles, and that 40 degrees turns into 60 or 70 degrees. And that's where I wish I was. But you can't have it all.
Can't have it all, but that's good insight for that person looking for their own piece of property down in the Caribbean. Stan, I really appreciate you taking time today. I've enjoyed the conversation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I've been talking to Stan Stockton, K5GO, ZF9CW, father of N5DX. Got to put that in there. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.